Welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast. Joining me as always is David Berner. I'm Jeremy Mikla, and we have a special guest here with us today. His name is Brett Vogelsinger. Am I saying that right, Brett?
You are.
Perfect. Just a little bit about Brett here before we get into the interview. He is passionate about helping students write with confidence and read voraciously. He teaches English classes to 10th grade students and AP Literature and Composition students each day in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. For 2 decades, he has taught 8th and 9th grade English. He loves talking to teachers about how to make the classroom a meaningful, engaging, creative space for our students and how to reach them in ways that impact them for a lifetime. Brett's book, Artful AI in Writing Instruction, was released just this past June, and we are super excited to have him join us on this episode of the Integrate This podcast. So welcome, Brett. We're super excited to be able to hopefully share some great insights to the audience that we have and get to know what your book is about and how you're using it to improve the lives and education of students.
Thanks, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
So Brett, I know Jeremy kind of went over a couple things there, just giving your background. But what was it that drew you into writing instruction? I mean, have you always been a writer and had a passion for that? And what was it that drew you into instruction with that?
Yeah, I've always loved to write. From the time I was a little kid, I was encouraged to write. Given, I remember in elementary school, the blank books they would give us to sort of create your own stories and books. And I'm grateful for that because it really helped me to value words, to gain some confidence as a writer early on. And that continued with me all through high school and college. So I really went into teaching with the goal of being a teacher who writes. So my second year, I published my first article, but there was a big, long gap between that and when I started writing for publication again. But all that time, I've always made a practice of writing with my students, and I've always enjoyed that. One thing that drew me to teaching in the first place was the joy of finding a place where I could apply creativity, where I could be connected to other humans really well, and where I could also, my own love of learning could kind of find a home. I've always been a person that's just been curious and loved to learn about things. So being able to connect with others and try to spark that in others is a big part of what drew me to the field of education.
So do you think, obviously we can sense already in just these couple of minutes your passion that you have for writing. Do you think, was there a moment where you think there was, or a person that kind of sparked that passion for you, or is it something that just kind of gradually developed?
My parents always encouraged it, which I think was really cool. They read to me as a kid, and I learned to love stories that way and wrote stories my whole not K, but probably 2nd through 12. I remember my 2nd grade teacher giving me the opportunity to write stories from my own imagination and making a detective story in which the main character was a worm underground. Just playing with ideas early on and having the adults in my life take notice of it and care about it meant a lot. So I hope to do that for others as well. And then moving on to high school, having teachers that again took an interest, pushed, critiqued my work, that was really, really helpful. So yeah, certainly there were standout teachers all the way through my own education.
And I know we're going to get into the book, but if you're just sitting around and you're kind of in your spare time and you're just writing for your own enjoyment, what type of writing do you typically like to do?
I've always enjoyed poetry, although I don't say I sit and do that on my spare time. I do it with students a lot. My first book was called Poetry Pauses, and it was all about how to engage with poetry reading and writing in the classroom, not as a pursuit of its own, but to help them with writing skills that they could generalize to all of their writing. So I think that's probably one of the early genres and probably the one that I enjoy the most when I'm writing with students. If you asked me as a younger person, I would have said, I want to write a novel. I'm not sure I want to anymore, but I've really enjoyed writing nonfiction.
Okay, yeah. And obviously too, with your, looking at more of the publication side, where you're actually, you have the Artful AI book. Is that something that you ever envisioned writing, or was it just it just kind of came about based on looking at AI, looking at what you were already doing? How did you start that process?
Well, I mean, go back not too many years, and I don't think I could have envisioned that the underlying technology would exist. At least I'm not. I do want to say right up front, I'm not a technology guru who's like follows that stuff. I certainly see on LinkedIn there's a lot of people that like every announcement from Google or OpenAI is like, you know, an exciting moment. That's not me at all. So in terms of did I envision myself writing a book that was about ed tech? Not really. But this book is really a book about writing. And I realized when AI first came out that some of the people celebrating it in education were people who didn't like writing, who were eager to escape writing. And some of those were people with highly educated people that I didn't think felt that way. And so I thought it was really important to get a voice out there of someone in the classroom who loves to write, who I think helps motivate students to love to write, and get very much a book about writing instruction that incorporates AI as maybe an unexpectedly helpful piece.
So, did were these ideas for writing a book on writing instruction coming into your head prior to AI, or do you think AI helped either put it on your radar or perhaps like took what your thoughts were and spun them off into a new direction?
I think AI challenged all of us to think about why we write in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Writing is a struggle. It's not easy. It's iterative. It takes time. And even if you love it, it's still a struggle. The same way that someone who loves exercise still, feels it when they're adding weight in the gym, right? So there's still like struggle involved. And so now we had this escape hatch that, maybe eliminated for some people, or they felt it would eliminate the struggle. So why should we do it anyway? Like, why is it worth it, especially for young people? And something I want to differentiate between is the writing that we have asked students to do in school is so different than the writing adults are asked to do in the workplace. So sometimes when adults talk about how much they're using AI in the workplace, they're talking about a very to write for them, and we're limiting it to that right now. They're talking about a very different animal, because the writing they're asked to do in the workplace is business writing. It tends to be pretty boring, even more formulaic than what students are asked to do in school. And we're
Sometimes
not
very technical, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and we're not trying to build a person, at that point. At the workplace isn't striving to do that. So I'm forgetting your original question, but I want to loop back to the idea that it's really about reckoning with why we write in school and why we write as humans, in the first place.
And why the term artful? Was there like something that you wanted to convey with that term in the context of AI and writing?
I think it's a little bit of an unexpected word to include. And I will in a minute reveal the original title, the working title I had going before we landed on this one. But one of the opening chapters, I reference a New Yorker essay about how AI will not create art. And the writer, who's a writer whose fiction I love, is talking about how art is an assemblance of choices and decisions that a human makes. Everything down to the last word, the last brushstroke, all these decisions and choices. And when you take that away, he's saying, when you take away that, you take away what makes art. And I'd agree, like something created exclusively by AI, I agree with him completely on that. My challenge in the book and my challenge in the classroom has been, can we use some of the capabilities and strengths of AI to help students make better choices as artists in their writing when they come to that palette or page? And I think we can. I'm excited about that. And I've learned a lot by listening to students, by experimenting, by discussing and reflecting on what we're doing with AI. All in an environment where, it's been mostly on my school laptops. It's blocked presently. Like the main LLMs are blocked. So I've been doing it in an environment where kids have easy access at home, no access really at school. And then they have a teacher in the middle who's trying to find like a middle ground. So yeah, I wanted it to help them to make good decisions, which is really the basis of what makes art, an abundance of decisions.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I think when most people, at least when I work with teachers in kind of the English language arts field, they don't approach it necessarily, at least the incorporation of AI, as being an artful process. They go straight into, this is cheating, this is plagiarism, and like, and and I do see why. Because of that, there are schools that tend to ban the use of the technology, and at the same time, kids do, like you had mentioned, have access to many of these different technologies outside of the classroom that they still are going to. So I guess kind of the question that I am coming to is, do you think that there's a shift that needs to take place, or is it taking place, that will bring the acceptance of use of AI in the process without it turning over all creative works to AI? Where's and the role of the human is still important in that? I don't know. Is that a question, or is that just a rambling?
I feel optimistic that that's possible. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to take some intention, some slowing down, some reflection. I've started using the phrase that we need to be ruthlessly reflective in our use of this technology. As long as we're doing that and thinking about, did this add something to my process, not just my product? Did it replace me, or did it push me? If we get kids in the habit of asking those kinds of questions, I feel really optimistic that it will absolutely be part of a bigger creative process for people. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, David and I have had a lot of conversations about using AI in a way. AI can be used to either be counterproductive, or to allow counterproductive struggle or productive struggle. And I think about it with writing and even with artistic works in the same way, is that yes, we can offload all of our hardest thinking moments to AI and push that easy button, but then what experience are we getting out of that? But at the same time, if AI could be used to challenge our thinking and to challenge our writing and to help us with that process to improve the product, I definitely think that there's value in there as well. And I think it's like all other types of learning, where in order for true learning to take place, there's got to be some sort of a productive struggle that takes place within the mind of that learner.
Yeah, and when you say process and product are something everybody's talking about with this right now, right? Because what it first promised to do is like deliver a smoother product, right? A sort of a nice, clean text that's perfect, but soulless, as a lot of people describe it. At least in the beginning, that might change over time. But I want to say that, like, if we're going to use it to impact a finished product, and I'm talking about writing again primarily, I know there's all sorts of other products it can help create, then the student better be able to explain why it's better than theirs, how it's better than their own work without the AI. And it better not be stealing their voice or taking away what they bring to the table and replacing it with something that's not even human. So that's where the reflection has to come in. Like, so they could say, oh, the product is better in the end, but can they explain how and why, and did they make choices, or did it just, polish it up and deliver it for them? There's a big difference in those two scenarios.
So do you think there's a shift that needs to take place with teachers in the assessment of written work that goes along with that, instead of maybe focusing solely on the product, that final result? Is it more about the learning that takes place in the process, and being transparent with the AI use along the way?
That's not a new idea, that we need to move away from the product. We value the product maybe too much and not the process enough. That's certainly been something in the ELA world we've been working on for a while, and a lot of people talk about. So that's not that part of the conversation is not new to us as English teachers, for sure. Are we valuing, and how do we value the process over the product, especially when value is often interpreted by students to mean grades, and that's what gets slapped on the product. So I think, that's a big question. We need to articulate why we're asking students to do different steps. I hear a lot of people talking about, like, the college professors who are like, well, I have to go back entirely to blue books, or the I've heard some teachers I respect a lot saying, like, everything needs to be written in class now. It all has to be done in the classroom. And I push back on that a little bit, because I feel as a writer, I grew so much when I had those moments of solitude to do my best work outside of the classroom. So I guess I just want to say that, like, maybe a more nuanced way to look at that is, can we teach and discuss and learn together the nuances of why it pays to abstain from AI at certain parts of our process, and why it pays to engage it at other parts of our process? Are kids going to cheat and circumvent that? I mean, some will, of course, but I have some students who are just as vehemently opposed to AI having any part of their writing as some of the most vehemently opposed teachers are. Like I have some of
Mhm.
those in my class too. So it's okay that we differ a little bit, as long as we're being transparent about it, and we're seeing the growth of the student, not just the products that are created by something that's not the student, a misrepresentation, if you will.
Sure. David, one more, and then I'll kind of shift us back onto track, I promise. And Brett, you teased us a little bit about what your working title of the book was, and I saw that you had shared it in some of our notes that we had back and forth. But why don't you tell us? Did this working title that you had kind of like help precipitate a shift in your thinking towards the use of AI in writing?
A little bit. My working title that I pitched to the publisher was Writing with the Enemy. And I wanted it to, well, first I was playing with the old movie Sleeping with the Enemy a little bit, but I also wanted to go with the idea that like a lot of my closest colleagues saw it as an enemy out of the gate. I think I did too. And then I saw, is it possible with this, enemy existing, this thing that's going to do your thinking for you, is it possible to use it in some other way? Now, as I got writing, I actually found more and more possibility for that and my own. So the shift that happened, I began to see it less as an enemy, and more as a relationship. We have to be thoughtful about how we build. I compare that in the book to smartphones, which one of the writers that I quote said, we all entered this relationship with our phones without thinking about what we wanted that relationship to be. I'm trying to be conscious this time of choosing that and teach others how to do the same. What kind of relationship do I want with this? But ultimately, the title Artful AI also, I came across that idea of that essay about art that I talked about from the New Yorker, Ted Chiang. And that impacted my early part of the book. So that was part of the reason it changed. The other part is the publisher was like, let's make sure we invite an entire audience, like not only the people who vehemently see it as an enemy might not want your book anyway, and the people who see it as like wonderfully full of possibility might dislike that title. So here we are, Artful.
Yeah, and I appreciate your perspective a lot because you had mentioned earlier, like, on LinkedIn, you see there's an overwhelming amount of information and there's updates and there's all sorts of people that are sharing a lot of great resources. And like, I look at all those and, I'm more in this space just like Jeremy is. But what I really like is the fact that like you have a passion of writing and writing instruction. And so it's a really good example because we have so many people at our schools that are already experts in an area, and you're clearly applying and thinking about your expertise and how AI is impacting that, and in what ways can you use it, and what ways should you be aware or guard against using it, in certain scenarios. And so it's a really good example of like, you don't have to be a tech expert. You already are an expert in a particular area, and then it's applying some of those things that come out to that, and not necessarily feeling like you've got to take in all this AI information at once. As far as if you're thinking about other teachers and some of the steps that you've taken, is there any concrete steps that you would give to teachers that some examples? What examples could you give them of steps they could take without having to become a tech expert?
I think number one is talk to students about this since they're already using it. I don't think they're experts in using it. They're using it kind of clumsily, the same way they're not experts in any Google searching or like just because they use it a lot or get addicted to something doesn't mean they're like excellent at it. And so, sorry, back up. That's not talk to students because some of them are finding interesting ways and they can articulate if they know you're willing and open to listen to them about this instead of like shutting it down or looking at them with suspicion immediately. They will open up and share some really interesting things they're discovering. And you'll learn about them as writers. Even if you don't like how they're using it or you don't like what you hear, you will learn about them as writers and how they see themselves as writers and the gaps in their how they perceive their own gaps and what they're able to do independently. So I've learned so much about my students. And I always tell people some of my best conversations about writing process and about student voice, have, like how you sound and what makes your writing different than my writing. That's come about since AI, because we have this sort of perfect but washed writing that's available to us at our fingertips. The second thing I would say is one of the activities in the book is called "Is It Cheating?" And I think that's an activity anybody can do. Take an old prompt you don't plan to assign and start doing things live with AI on the screen, big screen in the front of the room, while students write about 2 sentences. Is that what I just did cheating or not? And just 2 sentences that are reasoning with pencil and paper, like they're going to go old school on that. And the idea is, like, you'll be surprised at how much consensus you'll reach with your students just showing 5 different things. If I brainstorm and that's all I do, and then I go write, is that cheating? What if I share my brainstorm and then ask it for what gaps, what else should I think about including in this list? Is that cheating? What if I have it write it for me and then I go and write my own? Like these, obviously turning in the work that's wholesale created is cheating, but what about these nuances? And boy, so even classes that are not particularly engaged classes can get really engaged in that conversation, and you'll be surprised at how often they feel the same about details that you feel. But you got it. In the meantime, you're learning with them about the different approaches. And can I give you one more example? Like, I think this taught me a lot, and I learned this one from John Spencer from Oregon, who talks about this quite a bit. But he talks about how, people are like, oh, it's so good at brainstorming. It's so good at coming up with ideas. But why not pause, get your list together first, then get a list from the AI, or give it your list and ask for those gaps, like I said. And then don't forget step 3. What else do you have now? Now it's pushing you. You had your original ideas. You had the AI's ideas. You might pull 2 or 3 from there that you like. But what are the 2 or 3 more that come out of your own head after that? Or start narrowing your topic. You're getting more specific after that. Way better than having AI to outsource your ideation for you. Right now, your ideation is much more interesting because AI exists.
Yeah, and when I saw you present in that brief amount of time that we at ISTE that we were actually able to connect there, and you had a group of people around you, and I had seen this before, and I really picked up on it, and I think you're getting to that here, is that there's a workflow kind of here where you start with the human. You go to the AI, you get some sort of a feedback or input to the AI, and then you return back to the human again. So it's like HAH, and it seems to me like that's the loop here that you're really talking about that can be kind of beneficial, I think, in the creative process and in the writing process as well as other ways that our teachers or students might choose to use AI in a way that can, I think, to go back to that productive struggle, right? It is in the way that's going to lead to an enhanced process, right? Because you have that thought partner that's with you, along the way, and that you don't have to wait to get the feedback from the teacher necessarily all of the time. And I think there's a question here following, so I'll try to get to that. It kind of also makes me think, like, you talked about using AI to mine authentic human ideas. So what do you think that might look like in a real classroom activity?
Yeah, I think
beyond just the brainstorming, like you said.
Right. I think that example I gave is one example of how that can happen early in the process. But my book is organized by the writing process. By the way, each chapter also has an interview with a teacher that's not me, and an interview with a student in the piece too. So they talk about possibilities for AI that they've been trying in that writing process. But another specific example. Again, the first thing that everyone knew about when ChatGPT sort of got our attention was that it could draft a whole, 5-paragraph essay, the traditional what students were asked to do, which that's a whole other can of worms. We should be going beyond that in high school, that's for sure. But it could do it so quickly, it could render a draft really quickly, which made me begin to get curious. What if drafting didn't have to only be a cheat? What if we did take time to handwrite our draft the first time in class, or write it on a laptop that had no, AI access, which who knows how long that'll even be a reality. Let's do that first. Let's get our ideas down first. And then let's let the AI draft it. And our purpose is not to be oh wow, it sounds so much more polished or learned than I am, because that's what a lot of kids' first reaction is. They're like humbled by it. They're, oh, I don't know. No, that's not our purpose. Our purpose is, what directions did it take that you didn't think about? What are some of the examples it gave? What are some of the places it repeated itself? Are you repeating yourself in your draft? What are some places it went deeper than you went? How could you model that and take your own ideas deeper? So like we could hold up two drafts, one human and one AI generated, maybe even ask this question: is there a phrase or a sentence starter that you loved that made it sound really professional and learning? Could you take that sentence starter and weave it into one of your sentences? I guess my point here is, like, we could use even the easiest cheat capability of an AI tool and say, let's apply it in a way that isn't cheating, a way that's actually pushing us to keep going with our own ideas. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, let's always examine that possibility that the cheating is low hanging fruit and it's easily available, but it's not the only thing you can do with it, even if AI is generating your draft. And then can I give just one more little example? The other thing that I've seen some students that are even tough to engage in writing instruction, if I give them the option of saying, hey, ask AI, and some tools do this specifically as well, to just give you like 3 rewordings of a sentence you're not happy with, a sentence in your draft, give it 3 rewordings. If you're going to use it wholesale from that, I want to know it. I want you to credit that came from an AI, but I also want you to reflect on why you thought that captured your idea better than that original sentence. So now on a sentence level, we worked with this a little bit and we reflected on it too. And my hope is that we're gaining some things like vocabulary and syntax from looking at those models. We made decisions as a writer as well when we looked at those 3 options and thought about which one might be best.
Well, I think that really does a lot to reinforce the reflective nature of your writing, because it is forcing you to consider, this is better than I could have done on my own, and I could tell you why it's better than what I did on my own.
Yes, that's it. That's it. And sometimes I'll tell kids, it's not always better than what you did on your own, because you're a 10th grader and I want to hear 10th grade thoughts in 10th grade English class. Like, and this isn't even a person. This isn't even a person. It's an accumulation of what people put out there. And it comes out pretty bland. That's the other thing. I think we should sometimes be reading some of what AI creates and looking at its weaknesses with students, because they're blinded sometimes by the sheen that's on top. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention that, because like sometimes I think we're mesmerized by how fast it can do something, but then like just because it did it really fast doesn't mean that it actually is good, or
Right.
meet the standard that maybe you have, maybe the student has or the teacher has. It's kind of been fascinating to watch that aspect of it.
But do you think we're starting to circle back to something different here, where some of the models that are released now actually do pause before they start to generate the response, and they might even pause at another point in there? So granted, it's still way faster than what we would do on our own, but I think they're trying to at least acknowledge, and I'm not trying to give AI any sort of human attributes, but like it's thinking, right? And so it's pausing to kind of let you know that it's trying to make sure that what it's saying is going to be down the right path. I don't know.
I wonder. I don't know if it's that benevolent. The people behind it are that thinking about students and what message it sends. I don't know that the people designing the LLM have that on their mind. But
I think
that's probably true.
It's pausing to make you think that it's more contemplative than it actually is.
Yes, right. Exactly.
So, as far as like when you've had conversations with educators, is there any lessons or ideas from the book that surprise educators when they try it?
I think it, just speaking generally, like I've had a couple of them so far. I think the "is it cheating" one is super easy to do, and I think they're surprised when students actually want to talk about that and the academic integrity aspect of it, because we shouldn't just be like saying, let's use this now, without some really meaty conversations about, what are the complications with this? What are the things people talk about that adults don't all agree on? So I think that one is one that I think people are surprised at, how easy it is to do and how cool the discussion becomes when the kids start talking about, is that little nuance of what I'm doing with the cheating, is this little nuance. Overall, I think there were people that knew my work that were afraid when I came out with this book that I like went to the dark side. Like absolutely, I could name you the people that were like, "Oh, Brett, what are you doing?
Yeah, the teachers down the
How
hallway
could
from
you?
you, right?
How could?" Oh, some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
But also the ones who like I know from online and who love poetry pauses, and I'm grateful that I can name people now who have like read the book and they're like, no, like I see what you're getting at, and they're happy with what they're finding within it, and I was relieved by that because it was a scarier book to write than my first one, and I wanted to be true to that, the writing teacher, not handing over sort of the special precious things about what writing instruction can be to a machine.
So let's touch on the academic integrity here, which we kind of have been a little bit, but just maybe a different question towards it. And it comes from, the idea of being a teacher and working directly with students. So how do you try to help your students use generative AI ethically while still fostering them to be independent thinkers and writers?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is I still very much center a writer's notebook in class and having lots of low stakes time to write with pen or pencil, to sketch, to explore and organize things on paper. I think that's really important. One, it gives us a physical object to like leave the class with that we've sort of captured and distilled our thinking in. But it also, I mean, there's so much research that shows how good that is for our brains in developing the synapses and like making stuff work up there. So I want to make sure that we always center that in the classroom. And those are frequent low stakes writing pieces that we're doing in class almost every day. That's a lot different than me saying blue book only. We're only going to test you with your handwritten stuff and you at a solo desk. Rather, I'm saying we're going to have you work without screens and without AI sometimes when we're writing and for different stages in this writing process. The other thing I'm really interested in exploring as I move forward this year is whether we could actually, we will always need to have full-scale writing projects that go from pre-writing to, the end published, turned in result.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also wondering whether this can afford us opportunities to get more repeated practice in, let's say, revision. If we use AI with parts of drafts and then we get working on revision, could we get like 3 practices in revision before our next big essay rather than only practicing when we wheel around to the revision part of the next big project? I'm going to play with that this year. I don't have that all figured out yet, but I'm excited to see whether that's another way we could be. Now we're working on a student's independent work with revision, which is away from the AI, but we used AI to get to it quicker so we get more repeated practice with it. Does that make sense? I'm looking to play with that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's nice to hear kind of how you're thinking about taking some of the ideas that you even wrote about and now, making them practical and useful for classroom and teachers and for students ultimately in the things that they create.
Yeah. Thanks. I hope
Yeah.
so.
So Brett, if you're looking at students and the ways that they're engaging with AI, you talked about this a little bit, right? Like the good ways that it can be used to maybe push along their own thoughts and still remain involved in the process of writing. Or you can just, completely offload that responsibility and you lose some of that. But what are some ways that you think that AI can boost creativity for student writers, and I would just say writers in general, really?
One activity I talk about in the book a little is that we can push students to write beyond what AI creates in a topic. So let's say you've studied a topic deeply, and I'm going to go beyond just English class here. So I won't use the example from the book, which is a literature example. Let's say you've studied meiosis and mitosis in biology class, right? Which I haven't studied in a long time. I kind of forget something with cells transferring nutrients, right? But let's say you've studied that in depth. You're at the end of a unit. Like, why not have the teacher create something via AI that's like, explain meiosis and mitosis? And you could tweak it and edit it before you give it to kids if you want, take something out if you need to. But let's say you give it that and say, okay, guys, here's what literally everybody knows about meiosis and mitosis. Like, it's pulling from just like this great big blob of human knowledge and it's putting it in here. I want you to think back to our labs. I want you to think back to our discussions in class, any illustrations or comparisons I made in class. or that you could make on the spot in your writing, and take this bland piece of writing, delete anything you want to delete, add anything you want to add, color code your words differently than the words that are sticking around from that original. And I'm only grading you on your words and what's in that color. And I want to see where you can push deeper and make this more interesting and tell a little story about it. And I want you to push beyond the sort of boring but efficient version that AI created. Wow, I think that's pretty cool. Like, what makes yours different than the kid next to you when you explain meiosis and mitosis? You all have to have the same facts, but what makes your explanation sound different and make it you? Like, that's a really cool activity that could get to the finer points of what they know about the topic in assessing that, but also push students as writers in a classroom outside of English class.
I think it also displays their internalization for the content of the subject that they're studying.
Yeah.
And what made it personally meaningful to them that they can then, maybe use to even help remember, like us, 20, 30, I'm not going to say how many years later, when we were last in that biology classroom, that, like, oh yeah, I remember that cell division, and, then it comes back together again, whatever that is. But, it makes it definitely a stronger connection, which leads to that reinforced learning, which is I think part of that goal also.
And just contrast that with the old multiple choice test or the old short essay test that would have had you just regurgitating what AI could create like that anyway.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it did. And maybe that was last year, but like, this is a cool opportunity to say, no, the test is take that and go farther with it, because I know you learned it better than that or deeper than that.
Yeah. And it definitely goes beyond those 25-cent blue books that you had to buy in the bookstore on campus to bring into a test. Those were days. I remember that. I bet David doesn't, though. He's a little younger. And I like to make fun of him for that sometimes. But,
I never used a blue book either. Sorry.
Oh.
I never used them at all.
So in the book, you talk about strategies for building a healthy relationship with AI. What do you kind of mean by building a healthy relationship?
Yeah, I'm pulling this from a book. The last name of the author is Price, but it's called How to Break Up with Your Phone. And I mentioned earlier, her point was we all entered pretty intimate, close relationships with phones without thinking about it. And then we had engineers designing pretty addictive elements to those phones. And next thing you know, we spend more time with our phone than we do with our closest loved ones. We're not really careful about it. And it's hard to break that. So I'm trying to, even as someone who writes about AI, like, one thing I'm trying to do, and I'm going to talk to kids about this and this comparison with the phones that I just shared with you, I'm making sure I don't foster a reliance on it, because I really do take more pride in being able to do things on my own and think for myself. I love that AI is there for me, and there's times that I love using it, and what it creates is like, that is really cool. But I'm also being consciously choosing not to use it for some things when I could, just to keep my muscle strong in that area. And so I'm now making more like decisions about what are the muscles I want to keep strong, what are the ones I don't mind if it atrophies. Now that's a lot to ask of a 15-year-old. Good grief. But I think modeling that I'm thinking that way and that adults have the capacity to think that way about technology is important. So I'm also making the conscious decision not to take a deep dive on every announcement the big tech companies come out with. I'm distancing myself enough so that I don't wake up every morning thinking about AI. That happened a few times, and I'm like, I don't like that. Nope, not doing it. So then that's what I mean by determining what kind of proximity or distance I want from this technology in my everyday routines.
Right.
When
So you weren't
I have a choice.
So you weren't there like last week when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT 5.0, and we're trying to determine the nuances between that and the previous models.
I honestly don't care. I don't care. Like, I'm deciding to take a different view of that, and like you said earlier, like, what can I do with writing with LLMs? The LLMs will keep changing, but the principle behind that won't. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting to watch because like I mean, I do pay attention to that, and like I'm, watch that, as Jeremy mentioned, the
Yeah, I
chat.
don't mean to insult you if you do. I'm just saying, like,
No,
I'm
no,
choosing. That's my relationship
yeah,
with it.
yeah. I think no, it's a good point though, because I think that one of the things that I noticed right away, right, is that not that there wasn't like merit in using the old models, but what we see right now is that all of those old models that they had are now like ChatGPT 4.0, which is like the 4 Omni. That's now pushed to what is called like their legacy model, and you can't even access it unless you go to the settings. So now it's just like ChatGPT 5. So, and you brought up the phone thing, and it's kind of the parallels are a little bit interesting, right? Because like every year, every 2 years, right? We get a new iPhone and there's new iteration, but I don't know how many changes actually take place. But it's still a fascinating thing to watch. So therefore, here's a really hard question for you. If we talked about AI in 5 years, how do you think AI will have impacted writing instruction in the next 5 years? Do you think that we'll stay along this plane of kind of where we're at and more so honing the relationship with it and not these, massive changes that continue? Or do you kind of predict that maybe you don't even know? Maybe it's just like, who knows,
Yeah,
but
I mean, no
what do
one
you,
knows, but I think I am hopeful that we will continue to talk about why writing is worth the effort and the struggle, why writing free of it is, and why writing with it is. It's still going to be a struggle to write really interesting things, even with AI. That's not going to change. So I hope that we're able to reflect on that. But more realistically, I think it's going to be used an awful lot for feedback. And I hope that doesn't turn into grading. Those two things are different. But I think students will be getting AI generated feedback in their lives a lot. And so in 5 years, I hope if we do it right, I hope that that feedback is leading to human conversations. Jen Roberts, one of the teachers that I interview in the book, talks about how using feedback tools that AI generates the feedback, students kind of like it because they didn't have to share it with a human first. And then together with her, they're critiquing the feedback. Takes a little bit off of her plate. She doesn't have to generate it all. But they're saying, which of these points that it's saying is most important? Which ones do you disagree with? You're still the human author. You get to decide. I hope that when students are confronted with more and more AI-generated feedback, and I think that's going to happen, I hope that it leads to interesting human conversations that we can build relationships around. What I hope it doesn't do, the dystopian loop is like the students writing with AI, they're getting feedback with the AI, and like no humans doing anything.
Yeah.
It's like yucky mess. So I hope it doesn't decrease motivation for students to write because they feel they're getting less human attention to their writing. I started our conversation with that today. It was the attention from adults that helped me to keep growing in that way. And I hope that we don't lose that we can figure out ways that increase in feedback from AI will lead to better quality and maybe more frequent attention from adults.
Yeah, and I hope in the next 5 years too that we don't lose that relationship piece between a teacher and a student, which I think drives at the heart of what you're saying. Is that it's much more personal and meaningful to that student to be able to hear it from their teacher than always from the bot trying to tell them, hey, you're doing this part of your sentence wrong, and
Yeah.
and so I think that just goes back to, I think, just good quality teaching, and why I don't think we'll lose teachers is because it has to start with that relationships that you build with your students, and then nurture and maintain them in those positive ways to want them to keep learning from you and in your courses.
Right.
yeah. Well, we can interview you in 5 years, and we'll see how things have changed.
Hopefully I haven't collapsed under the weight of it all.
Yeah, we might have to meet you in the Matrix to do it.
That's right.
Let's end this part here. We're going to try something new here in just a minute, but let's one more question here about, is there one misconception, and maybe there's more than one, but in your mind, what's one misconception about AI in the classroom that you wish would just disappear?
I think that the expression using AI is used so broadly. I wish we could be more nuanced in our word choice when we talk about it. So I want the misconception that all using AI is cheating. I don't think that's true. And I think we need to identify how and AI is being used, with what purpose, with what reflection afterwards, so that overbroad term of the student used AI, I'd like to see that sort of expire and the conversation to become more nuanced.
Awesome. Well, we're going to try something here to close out our episode with here that we haven't done with another guest here. So you're being our guinea pig. So I hope that's okay.
Sure.
And I just thought these were great ideas as I was trying to practice some of my own, use of AI to help me with. I gave AI some ideas for questions that we wanted to do, but then help me write and rewrite and reword and make it sound more like a natural flowing question than what my brain sometimes will come up with, right? And it suggested that we try a lightning round of fun, quick hit questions. So are you ready to give this a go?
I think so.
Okay, David, let's try alternating here too, if we can. Okay.
Are we? Are these like, this is like a couple words to a sentence or two answers, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's it. And then we move on to the next one. All right.
All right,
Brett. One word to describe AI in education right now.
Wild. The Wild West, but that's 3 words, so wild.
All right. Favorite writing prompt that you've ever given students?
Write about an object that shows up in a surprising place. It's based on a poem called The Arm, in which the speaker finds a doll's arm floating in a pond. So try something like that. Write about something that's totally in the wrong place and go.
Coffee, tea, or something stronger when you're writing?
Coffee.
First book you remember loving as a student?
Where the Red Fern Grows in probably 4th grade, and I think it made me cry. That's probably why I remember it at the end.
I think that's a first memory for a lot of us.
Yeah, traumatizing, but so good.
Yeah, and traumatizing. Your dream co-author, alive or dead?
So since I'm writing about education now and not novels and things, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda would be really fun to write an education book with, because I think his eye as a reader and a writer and a creative person is just so interesting. And he worked as a substitute teacher, so he'd be fun.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, if AI could do one totally unrealistic thing for you as a teacher, which would you wish for?
I wish, and maybe this isn't so unrealistic, I wish that when I was teaching to a particular standard in class, here's my vision, if it could give me a little email alert that said, hey, this thing you're working on, these 3 kids struggled with it last time they took assessments on that. I don't have that yet, and I think that would be great. It's like an amalgamation of all the data and just like puts it in front of me in something 2 lines useful for that day.
Cool. Your personal desert island writing tool, a pen, a laptop, typewriter, something else?
Oh, it would definitely be, let's say pencil and paper, because pencil you could sharpen somehow. A pen could run out of ink.
The emoji that best captures how you feel about AI in school right now?
Something that's a little bit wild, like the one with the eyes going in the 2 different directions of a little bit of that, and maybe the one that is melting a little bit, like, ooh, it's a lot. Those 2.
That first one, I think, the first one that you mentioned, Jeremy just sent me that one in a text, I think.
I think I did.
Hopefully he doesn't send it when we're done talking. That's Brett.
And one last one to close it out. If you could ban one cliche from all student writing forever, what would it be?
I hate the word very. It allows them to use really weak words that come right after it. So I think just get rid of the word very and your writing always gets better.
Well, then this was an amazing, entertaining,
not very amazing, but
no, I didn't say that. Interview, and we're really glad that you're able to join us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And before we do let you go, one last thing. Would you like to share any way for people could reach out to you if they would like to engage, in email or on socials? or LinkedIn. And, you know, obviously we've been talking about your book. And is there any other upcoming things that you have that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, sure. By the time this comes out, there's a study guide that'll be available for the book for PLCs or schools that are reading it together. That's available on Corwin's website, so that'll be really nice. And that makes for good conversation among colleagues, especially colleagues who are coming at this from a very different perspective from each other. My website is brettvogelsinger.com, and you can find on there a lot of other writing I've done, including a piece about what I say when students are cheating with it, when they're using it in a way that's inappropriate, and how I start those conversations and lead them productively. And I'm also doing a webinar with Corwin that will be recorded and available, after the fact by the time someone's listening to this. But if you look at Corwin's webinars on demand, you can find that as well, where I'll be talking a little bit more. But yeah, those are all great ways. And I'm at the Vogelman on places like Blue Sky and Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me in all the places.
Fantastic. We'll definitely make sure to share those links in the show notes and descriptions. But again, thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Oh, thanks so much. Appreciate being with you guys.